Proceed, please.
Call Dale Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton, I'm going to get you to start by introducing yourself to the jurors who are seated over on the left side.
Okay. My name is Dale Hamilton.
And if you don't mind, spell your first and last name for the court reporter who's seated over here to the right.
D-A-L-E-H-A-M-I-L-T-O-N.
And Mr. Hamilton, where generally are you from?
Ackworth, Georgia.
Okay. And is that up in Cobb County?
Yes, sir.
And you traveled down to Glenn County pursuant to subpoena to testify in this case, correct?
Correct.
Up in Cobb County, where are you employed?
Regions Bank.
And can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what do you do at Regents Bank?
I'm a mortgage loan officer.
How long have you worked for Regents as a mortgage loan officer?
8 years.
And prior to that, have you always worked in the banking industry?
Correct.
And about how long in the industry?
19 years.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about what brings you down here to Glenn County pursuant to subpoena for this case. And I want to direct your attention to June the 18th of 2014 at Acres Mill Square. Do you recall something happening over at Acres Mill?
I do.
Let's give a little bit of background information for these jurors first of all. What were you doing over at that location?
I typically have lunch at the Subway there.
Is that very near where you work?
It is.
And just give us a general feeling of where your office would be with Regents compared to that Subway location.
I'm on Cumberland Parkway, which is maybe 10 minutes from the Subway.
All right. Is that on the other side of Cumberland Mall?
Correct.
Okay. And I've had you look at an aerial before. I'm going to show you what's already been marked, admitted as State's Exhibit 229.
Okay.
And to get our bearings here, this is 229 is showing the Acres Mill Road. You see that here?
I do.
Okay. And the Uncle Mattio's is marked here. Does that appear accurate to you?
Yes.
Okay. And then to further get our bearings, we have Cumberland Boulevard over here, and this is the mall, correct?
Correct.
Do you see the general area where your office would be?
It's a little further down by the Home Depot.
Okay. Down this general direction then.
Correct.
All right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to just briefly put this up on the easel. And if you don't mind stepping down in front of the jury, that'd be great. Sure. This right here. All right. So we have the Uncle Mattio's here on the top. You agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Cumberland Mall is over here. And you had mentioned that your office is a little bit further down towards the Home Depot.
Correct. My office would be in this area.
Okay. So it's even south of the Chick-fil-A.
Correct.
All right. And we've got I think the Regents Bank is down on the right or the left?
It's if you're going south, it's going to be on the left. It's
Okay.
at the intersection of South Atlanta Road and Cumberland Parkway.
All right. And then the Subway that we have is actually in here in the same building as the Uncle Mattio's. Is that correct?
It's 2 doors down from Uncle Mattio's.
So the jurors on this side can see. I'll turn it this way a little bit for you. Uncle Mattio's up here, and then your office even further south on Cumberland Parkway of the Chick-fil-A. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And in terms of places to eat and places to go for the general public, there's more of that over here towards the mall area on this side. Would you agree?
There is.
Over this area, this is more office space, with the exception of the Chick-fil-A, and of course there's a Publix and a Home Depot over there.
Correct.
You can take your seat. So further to get our bearings, let me show you a picture or two. You had an opportunity to look at some photographs with us in preparation for this case. Do you recall that?
I do.
I've now displayed State's Exhibit number 7 up here. Can you see it on the monitor from where
Yes,
you are?
I can.
Okay. And you had talked about a Subway restaurant that you ate at. Do you actually see that depicted here in State's Exhibit number 7?
I do.
What's that?
That's the Subway.
Okay. And do you remember where you parked that day?
Directly in front of their door.
And is your vehicle actually depicted in this photograph?
It should be.
You want to step down?
I was parked in the space here. Actually, you can see the corner of my vehicle where I back in when I was pulling out.
Right here on the edge?
Correct. That's my vehicle.
That's your car. Remember what kind of car it was you were driving at that time?
It's a 05 Lexus GS300.
All right. Let me see if there's a better picture of that. Yeah, so now we'll go up here to State's Exhibit number 11. I don't know if that's any better, but it certainly puts it more towards the center. Is your vehicle one of the vehicles that's in here inside the crime scene?
It is. It's this one here.
This one right here?
Correct.
Okay, is it backed in?
It is.
All right, sir. You can go take your seat again. I'm giving you some exercise today, I know.
Exactly.
So, explain what happened as you were leaving the subway on June the 18th of 2014.
Okay. As I was pulling out of the subway, my car was facing the other direction, and I was backing out. As I backed out and started towards the exit to get back in Acres Mill to head to work, the vehicle that you see pictured there pulled in front of where my car was, actually with the cars kind of sideways. And then at that point, the gentleman got out of the front seat, opened the door to the back seat, and proceeded to get the child out of the car seat.
Okay. So this is State's Exhibit number 11. When you said you came out of the restaurant, is this the door that you exited, the rear door of the restaurant?
Of the subway, correct.
Okay. And had you already gotten in your car when you first noticed this vehicle coming in?
Actually, when I initially got in the car, it wasn't there yet. When I backed out and was pulling out, that's when the vehicle showed up.
And what happened once the vehicle showed up as you were about to pull out?
He got out of the car, was asking for help, opened the back door, got the child out. There was another van that's on the right side that's not pictured. Actually, that's the van that's straight ahead, the yellow van.
Right.
There was another gentleman in the van that got out of the van that came over to assist him in getting the child out. They took the child out, laid him on the asphalt, and proceeded to, as I further realized, to perform CPR.
Okay. Once you saw this, did you actually leave that location or did you park your car again?
No, actually, I stopped and got out of the car, and as I was walking towards the incident, there were 2 Cobb County police cars that pulled in as well.
They literally pulled up while you were still on the scene. And I want to ask you about the weather conditions that day. It was June in Cobb County. Can you describe for the jury, what was it, a hot day?
Sunny, hot day, maybe 92, 93 degrees, pretty warm.
And the driver of the vehicle, Mr. Harris, where, of all the places, where did he put the child in the location? Can you actually see it?
Yes, it was over, not directly on the curb, but near the side on the asphalt there.
Right here, covered by this blanket?
Correct.
Now, did you hear Mr. Harris say anything while this was going on?
I did.
And can you just describe for the jury what you heard?
He says, "What have I done? What have I done?" Then he called the child's name. I think his name was Cooper. He said, "I killed my son. What have I done?" As he laid him on the ground. The gentleman that got out of the work van, and then there was another gentleman, I think he was at the Mattios, came over to assist him. And then the gentleman that was driving the vehicle kind of got out and was walking around and walked on the other side of the vehicle and was trying to make a phone call.
You saw him get on the phone?
Correct.
Did he ever ask you or anyone else while you were out there to call 911?
No.
Now, I want to ask a little bit about Mr. Harris's demeanor. When you first saw him, can you describe his demeanor to the jury?
He got out of the vehicle with a sense of urgency, got got the child out of the car seat, laid him down on the asphalt. I'm trying to remember, I think he knelt down next to the child, but then the other gentleman came out, and then the gentleman that was in the van, they were assisting him, trying to revive the child. And at that point, that's when he kind of got up, walked on the other side, was saying, "What have I done? What have I done? I've killed my son. What have I done?" And that was,
How was he acting? What did you see?
he was distraught. As I said, he was trying to make a phone call. He was distraught. But there were, everybody grieves in a different way, so it's kind of hard to say, was it believable or not, but, he was distraught.
Was there times when he was, saying things on one instance, yelling out, and other times when he was acting calm?
Well, he was calm when he was on the phone. And then, as I said, he was kind of frustrated. I don't think his initial call went through. And it looked like he had tried to dial again. And then his demeanor kind of swayed back and forth at that point.
While the other gentlemen were trying to care for Cooper on the ground,
Yes.
Where was he?
He was pacing on the driver's side of the vehicle, and then he went back around to the other side of the vehicle.
This side of the vehicle over here where I'm pointing, on the right side of this photograph?
Yes.
Okay. And did you see whether he was on the phone or appeared to be on the phone at all?
He appeared to be.
Now, at some point, you talked about the police officers arriving, 2 police cruisers?
Right. It was, they were seemingly by the time they got him on the ground and started trying to revive the child, there were 2 Cobb County police officers that pulled in. I don't think that they were there for that, because when they pulled in initially, there were 2 cars, and then one car stopped abruptly when he saw what was going on, and the other car didn't see exactly what was going on and kind of rear-ended him.
That they actually collided with each other a little bit as they responded to the scene. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. I think one of the cars has moved a little bit now, but was this one of the vehicles that you saw responding initially to the area?
Yes, there were 2 vehicles identical to that.
Okay. And they both kind of collided with each other about that general area?
Correct.
All right. And did you stay and talk to those police officers?
Not the officers, but later the detectives showed up, and then I had to give a brief statement to them as well.
After the officers arrived, what did you observe in terms of their interactions with the defendant, Mr. Harris?
There was a female officer and a male officer. The male officer was over by the child. The female officer was trying to console the guy that was driving the vehicle. He kind of got irate with her and was raising his voice at her, and then that's when the other officer, the big guy, came over and told him to calm down. And at that point, they exchanged words and ended up in handcuffs. And then the young lady took him and put him in the back of one of the other police vehicles.
You actually saw Mr. Harris and heard him having some words with the police officers that were trying to assist his son?
Yes.
Okay. And based on that, did you see them detain him?
Correct.
And where did they put him?
In the back of one of the female officers' cars.
While you were on the scene, either before or after, did you have an opportunity to ever look inside the defendant's vehicle?
In the defendant's vehicle?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. You didn't get close enough to the vehicle to see anything or anything like that?
No. I may have been 15 feet from the front of the vehicle.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you this. We had talked on several occasions, and I think we met. This is at least the second time that we met. Is that correct?
Correct.
I want to ask you about an individual named Leonard Madden. At some point, did you see a news report involving him? I don't want to talk about what he said, but did you actually see that news report of a black gentleman named Leonard Madden?
I did.
Okay. And I want to ask you, did you recognize him from any point during the time that you were out there?
Yes, he did come after the police had arrived. And that's when they were putting up the tape, take the area off. That's when his vehicle was going towards the exit to Acres Mill, and then he turned in and came down on the side of the vehicle towards my vehicle.
Okay, great. I want to follow up with you on that. Was he out there initially, this individual, Mr. Madden, was he out there initially during this course of time that you've just described for the jury prior to police arriving?
No.
When did he come out and come into the picture of the scene?
After the police were already there.
Only after the police had arrived and after the defendant had taken Cooper out of the car?
Correct. There were only 4 people. The gentleman in the work van, there was an African-American woman walking down the sidewalk on the phone, and then the gentleman that came out of the patios.
All right, sir. I don't think I have any questions for right now.
Cross-examine, please.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, Mr. Hamilton, good
Yes, sir.
afternoon. Just real quickly, you said that you were coming out of the subway, or you were right there at the subway. Were you still in your car when the truck pulled up?
Correct.
And you said that you saw him get out, and he got in the back seat, and you got the child out.
Correct.
Then you said he was asking for help.
Correct.
And were you the closest to the scene at the time that he was asking for help?
No, the gentleman in the work van was the closest.
Did you see anybody get in his car with him to try to help get Cooper out?
The gentleman in the work van was the assistant.
And then you saw another man trying to do CPR. Were there 2 men in the work van or just one?
Just one.
Okay.
I think the other gentleman came out of the patios. They've got an outdoor patio area, and I think that's where he came from.
And about how long was it that you saw Ross after he got him out of the car, put him on the ground? You saw him attempt to do some CPR or to give some compressions.
Correct.
All right. And I think what you told us is pretty quickly the guy that was in the van kind of just took over.
The 2 gentlemen, yes.
All right. And at that point, you said, Mr. Harris, he got up and walked away.
Correct.
All right. And was it at the point that he was walking away when you heard him say, you said over and over, he was saying, "What have I done, Cooper? I've killed my son."
Correct.
All right. And I know this all, it happened very quickly, right? I mean, this whole thing is really
Sure.
just a couple of minutes that you testified about.
Yes.
But timing-wise, that's kind of what happened. Gets the child out, puts him on the ground, tries to do some compressions. The other guys come over, they take over. He gets up, and that's when he starts the "What have I done, Cooper? I've killed my son," and he's walking away.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And you didn't hear anybody call 911?
No, sir.
Okay. You're where someone did.
That I'm not sure of.
Police got there pretty quick.
They were there, but I don't think that they were responding to that.
Okay.
Because they were there, it seems like, instantly.
Quick. Okay. And they actually had a wreck.
Correct.
All right. And then you saw the officers jump out, and one was a really, really big guy.
Correct.
Okay. And one was a shorter female.
Yes.
And then you saw the officers go over toward Cooper, and did they then kind of take over for the civilians that were there?
That I'm not sure of.
Okay. Did you see them actually get down on the ground and start trying to do compressions?
I saw them to get close to the child, but I'm not exactly sure if they were
All right.
doing CPR or not.
And again, I know it's been 2 years ago and it was
Yes.
chaotic, but I'm assuming you were kind of more focused on what was going on there with the child than whatever he was doing. His walking
Well, actually,
around.
everything just kind of played out in front of me, so I kind of had a good view of everything that was going on at the
Okay.
same time.
He didn't get up and just walk away and just like leave the shopping center, leave the area.
Oh, no. I mean, he stayed in the area.
All right. You described him as distraught.
Correct.
All right. And I'm assuming that's a description for, pretty much the whole couple of 2 or 3 minutes this all went down until he got taken into custody.
Yes, he was kind of, as I said, distraught initially, walked over, and then that's when he proceeded to talk on the, trying to make the phone call, and his demeanor kind of changed as he was trying to make the call.
And I believe you said that at that juncture he appeared frustrated.
Correct.
Okay, almost as if maybe the call wasn't going through?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, stand up, please. Is this the man that you saw that was distraught?
It is.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then just almost a moment later, another cruiser pulled up, and there was a blonde police officer.
Correct.
All right, also a short female.
Correct.
All right, and was she the one that you said that was trying to console him?
Yes.
All right. And that wasn't going well?
Not at all.
No. He was upset.
Yes.
All right. And they had some words, and you said the big guy told him to calm down.
Correct.
All right. And there was some kind of harsh hollering that sort of just broke bad real fast at that
Yes.
point. Is that fair to say?
That's fair.
And it was really both ways. He was yelling, and the officer was yelling.
With the big guy, yes.
Okay. The big police officer.
Right.
Okay. I've got an interview that you did, Mr. Hamilton. Was that a telephone interview? With a-
Telephone?
Did you do a telephone interview with Detective Murphy?
No, sir.
Did not.
There was a gentleman that came to my place of work. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember what his name was.
Okay.
Ex-police officer, and I think he said that he was there for the defense, wanted to get some information
Okay.
on exactly what I saw.
Somebody. Okay. Do you remember June? Do you remember June the 25th being contacted by telephone by Detective Murphy and giving a short statement on the telephone?
No, sir.
Do not. Okay. And I believe that you, by any chance, has the DA's office allowed you to hear your prior recording, your
Yes, sir.
statement? Okay. Well, you did testify today then that I think you said everybody kind of reacts differently, or everybody grieves differently, or something like that.
Correct.
All right. Okay, and you told us about seeing this other gentleman that you had seen on the television, and Mr. Evans referred to him by name as Leonard Madden. You didn't know the man's name.
No, sir.
You just recognized a person giving an interview on TV that you had seen the day or 2 days before there at the scene.
Right. I recognized him when he pulled in because, as I said, his vehicle was coming towards me, and then when he did the television interview, I recognized him at that point.
Okay, and that's what I want to make clear.
Okay.
What you're telling us is that this person that you saw giving the interview, who you believe is Mr. Madden, you actually saw him pulling into the parking lot in a vehicle and get out of his vehicle.
I was pulling in. I didn't exactly see him get out because when he pulled in, the officers were directing, and I went back in the subway because, as I said, it was warm out. But the officer then came in and told me that I couldn't stay in the subway. I had to come back out and stay in my car. So I could stay with him in the car.
All right.
So I'm not exactly sure if he got out of the car or not.
All right, he may have stayed in the car the whole time.
Possibly.
All right, but I just want to make clear, the person we're talking about that you saw on the news, you saw them pull in to the parking area in a vehicle.
Correct.
You did not see, the person you saw on the news you're talking about is not someone that you saw walking out of Matio's, or
Yes,
excuse
sir.
me, walking out of Cinco.
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Just one quick area. I was looking back at my notes from our interview with you in March of 2016 at the Cobb DA's office. You gave a description of the defendant's demeanor looking like bad acting. Do you remember telling us that?
Correct.
Okay. Can you explain to the jury what you meant by that term, bad acting, look like bad acting?
Again, everybody grieves differently. I just kind of likened it to if it were my child, I would probably react a little differently. I'd shed tears. I wouldn't have put them on the hot asphalt on a hot day as hot as it was, and I probably would have been a little more attentive. But again, everybody grieves differently.
Thank you, sir.
And of course, sir, you don't know Ross.
No, sir.
You don't know his personality.
No, sir.
You don't know how he or anybody else in this room might react to trauma.
No, sir.
And you certainly, fortunately, I'm assuming certainly you've never been in this exact same situation that.
Not at all. No, sir.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Free to go.
Okay, thank you.
Next witness.
Officer Lindsay Foglia. Have a seat.
Thank you.
All right, ma'am, if you will, introduce yourself to the jurors. They're seated to your left.
Detective Foglia, Cobb County Police, currently assigned to the Crimes Against Children Unit.
And why don't you spell your first and last name for our court reporter? She's to your right.
First name is Lindsay, Lindsay. Last name Foglia, Foglia.
I've called you to the stand as Officer Foglia, and that's accurate. You are a police officer, correct?
Yes, sir.
But you're no longer a uniformed police officer.
Correct.
Why don't you describe to the jury what you currently do, and then I'm going to ask you a little bit about your background with Cobb Police.
Yes, sir. Currently, I work with Crimes Against Children, so it's anything from sexual, physical, mental abuse of children.
How long have you worked with that unit with Cobb County Police Department?
Since April of this year.
And that's a relatively new transition then.
Yes, sir.
What did you do prior to that?
Before that, I was at Precinct 2 for about 2 years. Before that, I was at Precinct 4 for a couple months. And then before that, I was at Precinct 3.
So these police officers, these jurors don't know Cobb as well as we do. We actually have 5 different zones in Cobb County, correct?
Correct.
And was there a portion of time that you worked in the Acres Mill area?
I did. That was Precinct 3.
Precinct 3 covers that Cumberland Road kind of area and Acres Mill Road, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how long did you work a beat there? How long did you work in uniform division over in that area in Zone 3?
A little over 2 years.
And what were your responsibilities as a uniformed police officer over in Zone 3?
Respond to 911 calls, calls for service, domestics, anything that came in through dispatch.
Do you know who Officer Piper is?
I do.
Okay. Now Detective Piper, correct?
I believe she's officer there again.
Okay. And how about Officer Gallimore?
Yes, sir.
And how did you know Piper and Gallimore?
We worked the same shift at Precinct 3, evening shift.
Back on June the 18th of 2014, were you working on that date?
Yes, sir.
And why don't you describe what you were doing and what Gallimore were doing prior to responding to this scene?
Yes, sir. Well, it was a short day for Precinct 3. Not many officers were working. We weren't supposed to be proactive in any way because we didn't have a lot of people working the road. Just in case something important came out, there would be enough officers to respond. Officer Gallimore and I were going to Acres Square Shopping Center to go sit in the parking lot, type reports, and do a zone patrol. There's a lot of entering autos in that area, or there was then, and just to be a presence so that it would deter people from breaking into cars. As we were pulling in, Officer Gallimore was in front of me. We were in 2 separate patrol cars. He was in front of me. He turned right. I looked left to make sure no one was turning when I turned. As soon as I looked back right, Officer Gallimore had slammed on the brakes and was getting on the car.
Okay. Now, I want to be clear here. Had you been dispatched to this area over at Acres Mill, or were you already going over there on your own?
We were already going in over there.
Okay. When he slammed on his brakes, what happened?
We had an accident. I rear-ended him.
Okay, you ran in the back of his vehicle.
I did.
Okay. I want to show you. He must have stopped the car fairly quickly. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we have here states 211 that's now up on the monitor. Looking at 211, do you recognize this as being one of the still shots from Officer Piper's vehicle?
I do.
Okay. And you talked about responding to this area off of Acres Mill Road. Do you recognize these 2 vehicles over here?
Yes, sir.
And describe whose vehicle is the front vehicle and who's the one right behind it.
Officer Gallimore is the front vehicle, and the one right behind it is me.
Is this where you rear-ended him when you slammed on the brakes?
Yes, sir.
And it's kind of grainy because this is a still shot from the patrol video. Have you seen the actual video itself?
I have.
When she responded to the scene, where had you and Gallimore gone
We
prior to
were-
her responding?
We were by Cooper's side, baby's side.
Over here by this vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Looking at States 211, there's only one door that's open. Can you describe for the jury which door was open when you got out of the car and responded with Gallimore?
It was the driver's side, or the driver's vehicle door.
Was the rear driver door open?
It was not.
Did you didn't close that?
No, sir.
This is a photograph as Officer Piper's making the turn and coming in a little bit closer. Very hard to see here, but these two bodies, is that you and Gallimore over Cooper?
Yes, sir.
Were there any civilians when you first arrived on the scene?
Not that I saw, not when I got there. Officer Gallimore got to Cooper's side first.
Okay. Why don't you describe, first of all, about what time of day this was?
It was about 4:24 in the afternoon, approximately.
And 424, describe the weather conditions on June 18th of 2014.
It was extremely hot. Obviously, in Georgia, it's very hot during the summer. We were sweating that day. It's always hot in South Georgia, or in that part of Georgia.
Okay. And I want to ask you a little bit about what happened once you realized that there was a situation here and a child down. What did you and Gallimore do?
As soon as we saw him, Officer Gallimore jumped out of the car first. I jumped out after him. When I first looked to the right, I saw the car and I saw Cooper's legs. We got to his side. Officer Gallimore was on Cooper's left side. I was on Cooper's right side. Officer Gallimore started doing compressions, CPR compressions, and then I was trying to open Cooper's mouth to start breaths.
Were you able to do that?
We were not. His mouth was wired shut, for lack of better terms, because of rigor, stiffness of the body after death.
And can you describe how Cooper looked when you saw him?
He was a bluish green color. His eyes were open. Like I said, his mouth was shut, but I could see what I think was his tongue or part of his lip coming through the openings of his mouth or the openings of his teeth. And he was stiff. He had lividity, which is pooling of blood at the lowest points of the body. And
At some point after you realized that you had this situation, did you radio out what was going on for assistance?
I did not. Officer Gallimore did.
Okay. Gallimore did that.
Yes, sir.
And what did you do in terms of the scene before Officer Piper arrived?
Before Officer Piper arrived, Officer Gallimore and I just kept on trying compressions. Didn't realize at first that Cooper was dead, I think because of hope and wanting him to be alive. So we were talking with each other. I said, hey, I can't open his mouth. Officer Gallimore yelled up to the crowd, is he choking? Because we couldn't figure out why we couldn't open his mouth. That's when Mr. Harris came by the side. I didn't know who he was at that point. I shooed him away because we were trying to still do CPR. And I believe that's when Officer Piper got there.
So the scene that you're describing here, is this Mr. Harris's vehicle?
Yes, sir.
This is State's Exhibit number 7. And this white portion that's sticking out just around the corner of 7, is that where Cooper lay?
Yes, sir.
You described Cooper being on the ground near the vehicle. Is this the condition that you saw him in, looking at State's Exhibit number 51?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at the time when you first came upon him, did you know what his condition was?
We did not.
Is that why you attempted, or Gallimore attempted CPR and you tried to assist him?
Correct.
When Piper arrived, did you have any interactions with the defendant, Justin Ross Harris?
Only when he had come down after Officer Gallimore asked if he was choking, if Cooper was choking, he came over to Cooper and I shoot him away. That was the only interaction I had up until Piper arrived.
What happened when Piper arrived?
When Piper arrived, she came to see if we needed any help with anything. I asked her to keep everyone back from the scene so that we could stay around Cooper, try to keep him away from everyone. And I asked her to get his information because I noticed he had been pacing back and forth by the crowd, and then he went on the other side of the vehicle, other side from Cooper's body, away from the vehicle.
Okay. So he had actually kind of separated himself from that scene and from
Correct.
the vehicle. And when you say he was pacing around on the other side of the vehicle, let's go to State's Exhibit number 10. Looking at State's Exhibit number 10, can you see the general area where he was pacing around?
Yes, sir. So he was going to the right side of the vehicle and then also in front of the vehicle farther by the trees and bushes and the other patrol car.
Over in this area where I'm pointing out on State's 10, which would be the right side of that photograph, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you told Piper that you wanted to get his information, all right, did you and Piper have any sort of interaction with him in an attempt to do that?
Yes, Piper went to go get his ID. They had some sort of words, and I overheard him tell her to hold up his finger as if to say, hold on a minute, and I told him to give the officer his information, his information.
Prior to that, had he said anything about what had happened?
He said something along the line, it was when he was on the right side of the car, he said something along the lines of, this is my fault, or what have I done? I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something along those lines.
Okay. He said it was his fault. Now, while you were first interacting with him before he was detained, were you able to observe him and his demeanor?
Before he was detained?
Yes.
When we were by Cooper's side, I was paying attention to Cooper. I noticed someone pacing around in my peripheral, but I didn't really pay attention to him.
After he held up his finger to Piper and basically saying, hold on, what happened after that? What was your interaction with him and Piper's interaction with him?
At that point, Mr. Harris told me to, pardon my language, to shut the fuck up. He took a step past Piper and towards me, and that's when we detained him for officer safety, for everyone else's safety, and then to secure the scene.
Had you made any threats to him or anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay. And not to put you on the spot, but how tall are you?
5.5 inch, approximately.
Okay. So once you did that, when you say you detained him, was he actually put in cuffs for a period of time?
Yes, he was.
And where was he placed?
I believe Officer Piper put him in the back of her patrol car.
All right. Did you assist after this with putting up some crime scene tape before detectives and other first responders to come and assist with the situation?
I did.
And did you ever go into the vehicle itself? Was that your responsibility to go inside the vehicle? I'm referring to the defendant's vehicle.
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you assist with an impound of that vehicle? In other words, helping law enforcement to close it up and take possession of it for a further search?
I didn't even close it. I basically just did the written part of the impound sheet.
All right. Now, how long do you think you were on the scene before Mr. Harris was transported to Cobb Police for an interview?
I'd say approximately an hour, but that would be a guess.
Okay. And during the time you were out there, did you have an occasion to observe the defendant and his demeanor?
Before he went inside the car, I did.
Can you please describe to the jury what you saw?
Sir. Prior to him being placed into handcuffs, he was, like I said, pacing away from Cooper. I wasn't even positive who Cooper was there with. It was only when he came to his side that I realized, hey, this guy might be a part of it. Someone related to Cooper, maybe. And he was yelling. He'd go from calm to shrieking to calm again, and it just seemed very random and very odd.
Did you at any point see him crying?
I did not.
Before he was detained, did you see this shift in demeanor where he would be saying things in one instance and then not saying things on the other?
That's leading.
You describe how it happened before he was detained. What was he doing?
Prior to being detained?
Yeah.
He was pacing. He would shriek out like it's my fault, and then he'd be calm again, and you wouldn't really hear where he was. And then the next time you'd hear him, he'd be somewhere else because he was still pacing around. And he'd go for periods of long silence, and then he'd go to shrieking again.
Prior to detaining him, was he at any point on the telephone?
He was on it a good bit, I believe.
Do you know if he called 911?
I do not. I don't believe he did. I know we didn't get the 911 call when we pulled up, but I'm not positive he did while we were on the scene or not.
Now, you're pretty familiar with that area, Zone 3, having worked over there for a good period of time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll get you to step down for just a second.
back this up, maybe the jurors can see it a little bit better.
I now have displayed here State's Exhibit 229. It's an aerial photograph. And Detective, do you recognize this as being the Acres Mill area with the Uncle Mattios you just described?
I do.
Okay. And what is this that's depicted down here, and is it accurately marked?
It is. That's AMC movie theater.
Okay, so that's a movie theater that's over in that general direction. Is all of this in Zone 3?
Yes, it is.
What about this? Is this the Home Depot Treehouse office?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to talk about levels of congestion. Looking up here, is this Town Center Mall?
That's Cumberland Mall.
Cumberland, excuse me, the Town Center would be up in Kennesaw, correct?
Yes.
Okay, Cumberland Mall. And then what road is this? It's a major thoroughfare through Cobb.
It's Cobb Parkway or US 41.
All right. And then in terms of restaurants, eateries, things like that, shopping center, where is most of that other than Cumberland Mall?
It's all right here in, I believe it's called Acres Mill Shopping Center.
All right. I want to compare that to this area over here off of Cumberland Boulevard. Describe how this compares, the area off of Cumberland Boulevard, to where the area was that you found Cooper Harris.
These are more high-rises, businesses where people wouldn't necessarily be outside, and these are more shopping, restaurants, stuff where people go for leisure.
All right. Have you ever driven down Cumberland Boulevard? Have you ever been by AMC Parkway Point?
I have.
In terms of traffic congestion and things like that, from say you were traveling from Home Depot, what would be the fastest route to get to AMC Parkway Point?
Fastest route would just be to continue down Cumberland Boulevard and take a left into AMC Parkway.
All right. Not, in other words, by Acres Mill, where you found Cooper.
Correct.
Take your seat. The individual that you've described as Justin Ross Harris, I'll refer to him as the defendant as well. Do you see him here in the courtroom today?
I do.
If you could just point him out and describe what he's wearing for our record.
He's over there in a grayish white shirt and pink striped tie.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that's all I have.
Hey, Brian, can I get defense one, please? Officer Foglia, how long were you and Officer Gallimore there on the scene before Piper got there?
I don't know exactly, but a few moments.
20 seconds maybe?
I couldn't say for sure. I'd have to look at the video.
All right. Less than a minute though.
I don't know if it was more than a minute or not. It was a short time. She went from as soon as he put over the radio that what was going on, she left her evening spot down by the movie theater and rushed up to us.
Okay. Well, is that a close approximation, you think? Maybe from the time that you got on the scene until she got there, is about a minute or two seem about right?
It could be. It was short. I don't know exactly how long though.
All right, and were you aware when she got there? I believe you testified that you were.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you saw her pull up.
I saw her come over to us. I wasn't paying attention to the cars going by.
And did she direct people to step back?
She did.
And at the time she was doing that, Mr. Harris was still in the area and he was screaming, right?
I don't know if he was screaming at that point, but he was still in the area.
All right. And isn't it true that almost immediately she asked for his ID?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And then there was the argument or disagreement that you talked about, and he was basically taken into custody within, well, gosh, what, 30 seconds of her arrival?
I don't know time, possibly.
Does that seem about right?
I don't know the time. I'd have to look at the video.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been admitted.
Sure.
This is Defense Exhibit 1. In this instance, you just testified that when she got out, she was telling everybody to get back. At 2:59, she says, I need your ID. Okay. Okay, and here's where the argument is. And then she says, stop fighting. So you would agree that's where we're putting cuffs on if she says stop fighting.
Correct.
All right. And depending on whatever time the patrol car video started, that was at the 3:12 mark.
Okay.
All right, does that sound about right? Okay. And you think you may have been there maybe a minute or so, maybe two?
Possibly.
Very short period of time. Okay. What we're talking about, this entire incident was a very short period of time, what you testified to. Is that
Okay.
fair to say?
It
Couple
was
minutes.
short, yeah. There was a lot going on in that time period, though, so.
All right. And you and Gallimore jumped up, y'all got out of the car and went over there, and I believe you testified that y'all started trying to do some, or actually Gallimore started trying to do some compressions.
Correct?
And you said that, well, I'm looking at your report. Do you have a copy of your report?
Not in front of me, I don't.
Well, if you need it, I'll let you see it, okay? You said that, is it true that you attempted to open the baby's mouth and couldn't open it?
Correct?
And that's because it was already rigor.
Correct.
Right. And then I believe you testified the same as in your report that Officer Gallimore asked if the baby had something in his mouth, and at that point his father, Justin Harris, came to the baby's side.
Correct.
Okay. I know you were helping him and you were focused on what y'all were trying to do. But did you have any idea exactly where Mr. Harris was when Officer Gallimore asked that question?
I do not.
Okay. So as far as you know, Mr. Harris could have been just steps away from where y'all were.
Well, no one was steps away. People were farther back on the sidewalk.
Okay. Because when you first got there and y'all tried to start helping, you automatically shoot everybody back.
Correct.
Okay. So if Mr. Harris was right there with his child, he was one of the people, could have been one of the people that y'all shoot back and he had to step out of the way.
He could have been. I wasn't. Officer Gallimore got there first.
Okay. And then, according to your report, Justin Harris came to the baby's side.
Correct?
So at some point in time, he walked back towards y'all to where y'all were with Cooper, right?
Correct?
And there weren't any walls up around you. There weren't any tents up. So anybody that was out there at the scene could have seen him walking right back over there like you described in your report.
Correct?
And what you reported was that Mr. Harris had been about 5 yards away, 5 yards from the baby.
Prior to that. Not necessarily that's where he came from, but that was when I noticed him pacing around by the crowd and then on the other side of the vehicle.
Okay. So when Officer Gallimore made this request and Mr. Harris came back to where y'all were, according to your report, he had only been about 5 yards away from you.
Prior to that, yes.
And he was pacing back and forth.
Correct.
Okay. Kind of like people do sometimes when they're nervous or upset, pacing.
When they're nervous, yes.
And you saw him not just pacing, but with his hands on his head.
Mm-hmm.
Something like this?
I don't know if it was exactly like that, but his hands were on his head.
One hand or both?
He was flailing his arms around every once in a while.
He was flailing his arms around. Was he looking up while he was pacing with his hands on his head?
Again, I was paying attention to Cooper. I don't know exactly where he was looking.
But you saw it enough to put it in your report.
Correct. Every once in a while, I saw it as a peripheral.
And then after that, after Mr. Harris had come forward to where y'all were, the report says you had him step back away.
Correct. We were still trying to administer CPR at that point.
You gave him a direct command to move away from where y'all were.
Correct. At that point, I didn't know who he was.
And after you gave him that command to back away, according to your report, he started pacing again.
I don't know if he paced again right after that or not.
After you gave him a command to back away from where y'all were with the baby, he put his hands back up and started pacing again, right?
Correct.
Just moments later, y'all were asking for his ID, right?
Correct. Officer Piper did.
And he didn't obey that command.
Correct.
He put his hand out to her because he's trying to make a phone call, right?
Correct.
Like, hang on. Right?
Correct.
And he ended up in handcuffs and arrested.
Not because he was making a phone call. Correct.
Okay. Well, he disobeyed that command. He didn't give you his ID at that point.
Correct.
And there's nothing in here saying that he attacked you.
No.
Okay. You thought he had an attitude. He became uncooperative. Uncooperative is the same thing as not obeying a police command, right?
Could
He
be.
didn't cooperate. Okay. And just moments before that, you had given him a direct command to back away from where he was, right there with his child, right?
Correct.
And if he hadn't obeyed that command, that would have been uncooperative. And you could have arrested him for that. Isn't that true?
Could have. Probably wouldn't.
Thank you.
Did Mr. Harris ever offer to assist you in Gallimore as you're trying to care for his child prior to being detained?
No, sir.
Thank you, you're good to go. Thank you. Next witness.
They would call Officer Brett Gallimore.
You solemnly swear upon the testimony you give to the court and the jury that you shall bear with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Sir, would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury by telling them your name and then spelling it so we get it right in the record?
Yes, sir. My name is Officer Gallimore, Brett Gallimore. It's B-R-E-T-T. Last name Gallimore, G-A-L-L-I-M-O-R-E. I work for the Cobb County Police Department.
Officer Gallimore, you fitting okay in that chair in that box, sir?
Yeah, it's a little tight in here.
All right. Officer Gallimore, where do you currently work?
I work Cobb County Police Department, like I said. I also work at Precinct 3. There's 5 precincts. I work in the most southern part of Cobb County.
How long have you worked with Cobb County Police?
4 years now.
Okay. And have you always worked as a patrol officer?
I have, at the same precinct.
Okay. Well, I think we've explained to the jury fully what post-certified is and what a patrol officer does and things like that. Are you post-certified?
I am post-certified.
Okay. And do you respond to typical patrol officer calls
I
like
do.
other officers?
Yep.
Okay. Back on June the 18th of 2014, what zone were you working at?
I was working at Precinct 3 still, and I was working 315 beat. We have different beats there, so that's the beat that I was working at there.
Did you get a call that afternoon to respond to Acres Mill?
I did not get a call, no.
Okay. What were you actually doing?
I was actually conducting a zone patrol. There's a shopping center called Acres Mill Square. That area had been getting a lot of entering autos, people breaking into cars, taking people's personal properties out of there. I was actually going in there to conduct a zone patrol into that LA Fitness area and shopping center.
And who were you working with that day?
Officer Foglia.
During that day, did you actually come upon something over by the Uncle Matteo's?
I did.
Okay, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury a little bit about that, what you first noticed, and where it was.
Yes, sir. I was driving down Acres Mill Road from Cobb Parkway. Officer Foley was behind me. We both agreed to go in there, kind of on patrol, because we were hitting so bad. Coming off Acres Mill Square, I made a right-hand turn. Immediately to my right, I noticed an SUV that was still in the roadway, and I saw quite a little bit of a crowd looking down at the ground by the driver's side. Also witnessed a male, who was later identified as Ross Harris, walking behind the SUV kind of towards my right. So vehicle's on my right-hand side. I see the crowd looking down at the car. I see Ross Harris walking behind the car on his cell phone, kind of like looking up in the, on the air a little bit. And I continued to drive up. I still didn't know what was going on.
Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
Okay. When you pulled in there, you said you noticed, we later determined to be Ross Harris. Do you see the defendant, Justin Ross Harris, in the courtroom here today?
I do.
Can you identify him by what he's wearing and where he's seated?
Yeah, he's seated over there. He's wearing, I think, it's pink, white T-shirt, and slacks.
As the record reflect, the witness has identified the defendant.
Amen.
Okay. Now, in this zone, are you familiar with this area, generally the Acres Mill area, where the Home Depot Treehouse location is, Cumberland Parkway, and the movie theater and things like that?
Yes, sir. Very familiar.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as and previously admitted as State's Exhibit 229. Looking at this aerial map, are you familiar with this area?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how are you familiar with it?
I've worked there for about 4 years now.
Okay.
So.
And would this assist you in describing to the jury this area and traffic patterns and things like that in this area?
Yeah, absolutely.
Your Honor, I have permission to Officer Gallimore to step down.
No.
Okay. Officer Gallimore, if you just step down for a second, we'll put this up on an easel. All right, now let me get a pointer here. When we're talking about, maybe you can just step to the side just a little bit so everybody can see it. Yeah, you're going to block out half the jury.
Yeah, I think
you are.
yeah,
So it's like total eclipse of the mountain. Okay. Looking at Uncle Matteo's up here, you familiar with that area? Is that what you were talking about where you were?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you're familiar with this area and what's depicted as the Home Depot Treehouse office there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you're also familiar with the roads and how it travels up to Cumberland Boulevard, around the mall, and where that movie theater is, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, could you describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury this area by the mall and this area where you found the car as far as, is it residential, business, like restaurants, things like that? How would you describe it?
Yeah, this is going to become the mall. It's a very highly populated area. A lot of vehicles, traffic coming out of the mall. Mostly the mall is the biggest traffic part. Right here is going to be industrial buildings, hotel. There's also called the Galleria. It's kind of like a mall, food, stuff like that, shopping. And Acres Mill Square is the area that I was talking about. We were trying to get to zone patrol. There's a lot of entering autos that happen right in this little sector right here. And that part that I told you I was driving down is actually right here on Acres Mill Road, pulling into this back entrance right here.
Okay. Now, where the Cinco's is, with the restaurant, is there a lot of people around here that go dine there and things like that and that are in this area?
Yes, there's a lot of people out there. There's also like a patio area. Usually gets pretty heavy traffic up there, so there's people that are dining in that area. Yeah.
Okay. So if you travel up this road and then you take a ride on Cumberland Boulevard, what is the easiest and fastest path to get to the movie theater right there?
The fastest path you're going to take is, for me working on Zone 3 for 4 years now, the fastest path I would take is Cumberland Boulevard right here. You're going to turn right from Cumberland Parkway, to Cumberland Boulevard. You're going to go past the mall. You're going to keep on going down Cumberland Boulevard. You literally hit right on AMC movie theater. Right here is going to have the least amount of traffic, least amount of delays as far as traveling. It's from its easiest route.
Okay. And are there other offshoot roads that you can travel over to this road, Cop Parkway, to get over to the movie theater as well?
Yes. If you take a right off Cumberland Parkway, on Cumberland Boulevard, you can still go down Cumberland Boulevard, and Riverview Parkway is right here. So it'd be a turn just prior to keep on. If you kept on going the first route, Riverview Parkway is right here. You take a right, you come down Riverview Parkway, take a right on Cop Parkway, and you're right there again.
And again, if you travel down Cumberland Parkway or Cumberland Boulevard and you take Acres Mill here to Cop Parkway, is it faster to go around the back that way, or is it faster just to turn right and go directly to the movie theater?
Yes, it'll be fastest to take a right on Cop Parkway from Acres Mill Road. So come down Cumberland Boulevard again. If you were to take Acres Mill Road, the fastest route you're going to take is down Cop Parkway. So they give you a direct route to AMC Theater right there.
Now you talked about this area over here is populated with restaurants, businesses, things like that. What is the difference back then in 2014 as far as this area going through here? Is it populated with a lot of people walking around and things like that, or is it something different?
Now it's a little bit more populated. There's back
In 2014.
in 2014, there wasn't as many apartment complexes as there are now. Brave Stadium has come into Cobb County, and they're building complexes recently that are very, very populated up here on Cumberland Boulevard. So now it's going to be a lot more busier now down Cumberland Boulevard than it was back in 2014. Then.
Okay. 2014 was a not busy area as far as people walking around and things like that.
Correct. There will be many people walking around down that area.
Okay. You can have your seat. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Officer Gallimore, I had stopped you and you were discussing the fact that when you pulled in, you saw a crowd of people around a child and you saw what turned out to be the defendant on the other side of the vehicle.
That's correct. Well, actually walking on the back side towards the other side of the vehicle.
Okay. Was he anywhere close to the child at that point?
No.
At that point, did you hear what he was saying or anything like that when you first pulled up?
No. I was still inside my car.
At some point when you saw this, what did you do?
When I pulled in, like I said, my car was on the right. I saw the crowd looking down towards the driver's side door, and I continued to go forward to see what everyone was looking at. And when I passed the back side of the vehicle and I actually could see where the driver's side was at, I saw that there was a child on the ground and a guy kneeling over the child. I could tell the child was not moving. So I instantly just slammed on my brakes. I slammed on my brakes so hard, my BPAR officer Foglia actually rear-ended my vehicle. Got out of the car, ran to the front, ran towards the child. At that point, there was a male. I don't know who he was, but he wasn't doing CPR or anything like that. He was just kneeling over the child. I told him to go ahead and move out of the way. Looked at the child, and the child was not breathing. So.
Now, how would you describe just physically the behavior of the defendant when you saw him going back and forth on the other side when you first arrived?
The first time I saw him, it was kind of just talking on the phone.
Okay.
That's all I could see. I saw him for a brief second. It stood out to me because he was the only one moving around. Everybody else was frozen. Like when I first pulled up, he was the only person moving. He was talking on the phone, kind of looking up in the air. I figured something was going on with that individual when I pulled by him.
While you were tending to the child, did you notice the defendant in your periphery or anything like that, or hear him or anything of that nature?
Not at that time.
Okay. When you got to the scene and you got down to the child, did Officer Foglia follow?
She did.
Could you describe to the jury what you found when you came upon the child? Describe the child's condition as best you remember.
Yeah. When I came up to the child was not breathing. You could tell that something seriously has gone wrong. I didn't know at the time if the kid just got hit by a car, if the kid was choking, or what was going on. Got down on my knees. I immediately saw if the kid was not breathing. Like I could actually see Cooper's tongue sticking through his teeth. At the time, I didn't know if I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I looked at it as, maybe he was choking on something that matters to that. Child was very pale, so I kind of figured maybe he was choking, or if maybe a car hit him and he went into shock. So at the point, I didn't know. So I immediately began doing compressions.
At this point, let me ask you. He was what type of ground was he on? What was it?
He was laying on his back on the asphalt next to the car,
Okay.
and it was very hot on the ground too.
Okay. Was it hot outside that day?
Yes, it was extremely hot. I was sweating in a matter of seconds out of my car.
Okay.
After you noticed the condition of this child, what, if anything, did you attempt to do?
At that time, immediately started doing compressions. I mean, kids aren't breathing. That's my first thought. Get the kid breathing again. Officer Foglia came over, began looking at Cooper's mouth, see if she can get the child's mouth open. As we continued to do compressions, I actually looked up at everybody. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Is he choking? Like, I had no idea what was going on. The more compressions I did, the more I could observe the child in the state that he was in. And you can actually see his eyes were wide open, and you can see a gray shadow towards the bottom of his eyes. And from my training experience, that's a sign that the child's been deceased for quite a while. And also, I looked at his legs that were still bent in the air, and his hands were kind of gripped to the side. And when I tried to move his legs, I could tell that the child had rigor mortis at that time.
During your time at the scene, just from what you observed of the defendant, how did you describe it in your police report as far as how he was acting?
I believe I mentioned acting hysterical,
Okay.
acting upset.
Okay. And what do you mean by that? What do you mean by hysterical and upset or acting like that?
I mean, like, when I say he was acting hysterical, I literally mean felt like he was acting hysterical. Not genuine, but acting.
Have you experienced people that have reacted to trauma and things like that over the course of your career as a police officer?
Yes, sir. There's been multiple incidents where I've gone to scenes, whether it be a homicide that just occurred, and there's family members that come out acting, upset, distraught, in shock. And I've also been to suicides where family members have.
Judge, I'll go ahead and object to this point. I mean, that's not relevant. Whatever he's seen at some other scenes doesn't have anything to do with this.
I believe it does. It gives his experience and the foundation for what he's testifying to, Judge, completely.
Allow whatever objection.
You're finishing. You've seen suicides.
Yeah, I write on suicides where a husband is called and said his wife just shot himself or shot herself, and I've seen the look on him and the way he acted and the emotions that take place during some kind of instance like that.
Let me ask you this. Would you agree, having done this for that long, people react differently to trauma?
They do.
Okay. So is there a general there's got to be a broad spectrum of how people react.
Yeah, there is. There's usually like a consistency in the way they act. They're very emotional, and they stay very emotional until things start to calm down a little bit. Time goes by, they're still distraught. You can just see at that point. Some people are just in plain shock. They have that stare, like they just keep staring at you, like they're just out of it.
Like catatonic.
And there's consistency in the way each person is different, but there's also consistency in the way each person reacts to things.
And within that broad spectrum of how people react, was the defendant's behavior at the scene, from your experience, outside of that spectrum?
Same objection.
Same response.
Well, to that objection, we'll sustain the objection. I'm going to overrule it. You can ask it based on what you objected to.
Thank you.
That means go on. Look forward.
Hurricane's coming.
No, it was not artfully phrased, but it means that you can answer the question. Over objection.
I'd say there's no consistency in the way he was acting whatsoever.
Now, when can you estimate to the jury how many chest compressions you did? Just to estimate as best, how long were you down there with that child?
It felt like a long time, but I would have to estimate. I didn't really start losing track after I started. I was doing compressions at the same time. I'm talking to Officer Foglia, like, hey, I think this child's been dead for a long time. I don't think there's anything else we can do. And she kept on, and she even said, like, let's just keep going, let's just try. And it got to that point where we couldn't try any further. It was obvious at that point. But I would have to say it was probably about 90 to 100 in that area. That's how I would estimate.
And when you arrived, was there only, how many doors were open?
I believe it was just the driver's side door.
Did you ever close any doors or anything?
No, I went immediately to the ground with the child.
At this point, did you wait for EMTs or EMS to arrive?
At the time, we decided to stop the compressions. We decided that it was best just to stop. And I remember at that time, I didn't want to leave the kid on the asphalt. I even discussed it with Officer Foglia, like, hey, what if we put him in my car? And she reminded me, hey, this is a crime scene. You can't. And so at the time, I was trying to figure out what to do with the child. Because I don't want to leave the child on the asphalt. The way that Cooper looked. So at this time, I'm thinking I'm going to take my uniform off and just drape over the child. That way, at least there's some kind of cover-up, so because everyone is still looking what's going on and everything like that. So at this time, I could hear, we later identified as Ross Harris, kind of making a weird scream behind me. Caught my attention to the right. That's when Officer Floyd actually got up and walked over to Officer Piper, who arrived about 2 minutes later.
Okay. And when Officer Piper, did you hear her conversation with the defendant at that point while you were at the scene, or is that something that your attention was turned to a little bit later?
Yeah, a little bit later, and what I could hear while I was on the ground, I was still kneeling over the child, trying to figure out what to do with the child, and I could hear Officer Piper saying, hey, I need to talk to you when you got the phone, and something along the lines of that.
And what, if anything, did you hear? How did you hear the defendant respond?
Next thing I couldn't really hear exactly what he said after Officer Piper asked what had happened, or to hang up the phone and talk to her, but next thing I heard was him cursing at Officer Foglia. When Officer Foglia stepped up and said he needed to hang up the phone and talk to her.
Okay. Do you remember exactly what he said?
Yeah, he said, shut the fuck up.
And do you remember if he's followed up with anything after that?
Yeah, at that point, I had to leave the child on the ground, and because when I looked over, at that point I looked to my right, and I can actually see Ross Harris looking down at Lindsay, or Officer Foglia, looking down at her and saying, shut the fuck up. At that point, I felt that there was maybe a threat was at that location, so their safety. So I get up, and I told him to watch his fucking mouth, screamed at him. He turned and looked at me, and brought his attention towards me and said, fuck you. And
now, when he said that, did he say that as loud as he said that stuff to Foglia, or have you reviewed the patrol car audio?
Yeah.
Could you hear that part on it?
I didn't hear that part. I remember it clearly because he looked right in my eyes and said, fuck you. And as he was turning looking towards me, I was walking up towards him. At that point, I told Officer Piper and Lindsay, I said 10-15, which means detain him. Because at that point, it was best for his safety and ours that he was being detained.
And did you assist handcuffing him?
I did. They both, right when he started saying that, I even have to say it, they were already grabbing his wrist to go ahead and put handcuffs on him.
And after that happened, did you stay with the child?
Yeah, I walked back towards the child, and because I saw that they had him under control at that point, and EMS was arriving. Well, the first EMS was arriving, the fire department.
And when they arrived, did you help in any way as far as with EMS or lead them toward the child or anything like that?
Yeah, I advised them where the child was located. I mean, right there, so they already knew, and I pretty much on their way over there. I'm like, hey, I don't think there's anything you guys are going to be able to do. And at that point, I began to set up the crime scene tape and securing the area and trying to keep witnesses around.
At that point, when they showed up, I guess right after the defendant was detained, did they bring a sheet to put out over the child?
They did. They brought a sheet to put over the child. I actually got some people back. I actually went over to Cinco's immediately because I could actually see people up in the balcony. And so I know the manager there. We work with him, with incidents and stuff like that. And I asked him if he could keep that closed down just temporarily, just out of respect for the child.
Could you notice anything about the child's clothing or body or anything as far as sweat or anything like that?
At the time, his hair was matted down. While I was on the ground, I was so fixated on trying to revive the child. I don't really remember the clothes that well, but I do remember his skin was very pale, and you know, it's really pale.
After, did other detectives and officers show up on scene?
Yeah, my sergeant showed up on scene pretty quick. He used to work in Persons. He was my current supervisor at that time, as well as detectives from Persons and other detectives from other areas to try to help out the other departments.
Did you start cordoning off and setting up what's known as a crime scene, an initial
Yeah.
crime scene? And
Yeah.
what do you do usually to do that?
Set up the crime scenes. You pretty much try to get an area that's safe enough to put, you know, the yellow tape up, put it around the crime scene, big square, just enough where people can work and keep safe, the area safe.
During, excuse me, the time you were there, did you ever see the defendant in your interactions with him at all crying or anything of that nature?
I never saw him cry once.
Did you remain at the crime scene the entirety of the time?
I did.
Okay. Tell the jury what your role was there at the crime scene after detectives and everybody arrived.
Yeah, as the detectives arrived, I kind of gave them a rundown of what had just occurred, what I saw, what I witnessed. Then, as time went by, crime scene showed up. I helped along with the crime scene. They started taking measurements from as far as pictures, but as far as what I did is help with the measurements. Crime scene was doing the measurements from the child's area to where, you know, every corner of the car, the distance, and crime scene tech would yell out how far, how many inches. I'd write it down for him, help him out with that kind of aspect of things.
And during this time, did you ever pay attention to the defendant in the patrol car, the back of the patrol car or anything?
I had seen him, looked over a few times with them.
Okay, and what did you notice when you looked back toward the car?
Just calmness, sitting in the car. I didn't see any emotion whatsoever when I looked at him.
And during the time, I'm sorry, still sick here. Did you do anything else once the crime scene was finally released?
Once crime scene was released, pretty much helped gather up the sheets, crime scene tape, and that's about it.
That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, Officer Gallimore, you are a sworn police officer, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And you're employed by Cobb County Public Safety.
Yes, sir.
All right. And as part of your job as a police officer, you have to make reports.
That's correct, sir.
And you make reports of the cases you work on and the things you observe, and then those reports are looked at by a supervisor, and those are kept in the regular course of your business, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. I'm going to show you. I'm showing this report. Should you take a look at that, please, and see if you recognize that.
That's the report that I wrote on this incident.
What I've handed you is your report, and you wrote this on June the 19th, 2014.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. I believe so, yeah.
That's correct.
It should be whatever date's submitted on and report up on top. I didn't see that part.
Okay. I'm going to move this as Defense Exhibit 3.
For what purpose, Judge? I don't know if it's refreshing recollection, prior consistent statement. No. My objection is no foundation of relevance at this point.
Well, if his objection is no foundation, he's just identified it as his report. So that's the foundation. Relevance is it's his report that he made on this particular case.
And Judge, that's absolutely hearsay unless there's some exception and he hasn't laid a foundation.
What exception?
There
For
is an
what
exception.
purpose?
24-8-8038. It's the public records and reports exception. This is a matter observed pursuant to a duty imposed by law. He's a public officer. There's a very specific, in the new evidence code, very specific code section. This is an exception.
Judge,
Yes.
this is absolutely not what that code section talks about.
I know. Hearsay without exception, sustain the objection. No defendant's exception to the court's ruling.
Since we're at the end of the day, Judge, I would just ask to make my proffer then at the end of the day after everybody's gone. If that's okay with you.
We've done it.
Okay. All right. I'll extend your report.
Yes, sir.
Just go through it then. Now, you would agree that this was a rather significant case for you professionally because it involved the death of a child, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you came back and you made a report that, was it that night or at the end of that shift or the very next day?
It'd be at the end of my shift whenever I was going back to the precinct.
Okay. So I want you to take a look at the first paragraph where you indicate that you see a crowd of people standing around a vehicle looking at the ground. And then you put in your report that you also witnessed a white male talking on a cell phone. And then you described, in your report, you described the demeanor of that man. Would you tell the jury how you described the demeanor of that man?
I wrote it was acting hysterical and extremely upset.
Acting hysterical and extremely upset. Okay? The man on the cell phone. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is this the man that you're talking about that in your report at the end of your shift said was acting hysterical and extremely upset?
That's correct.
Okay. I want you to show me where in your report, if you would direct me, to where you make any suggestion that he was acting or putting on some sort of a performance to be hysterical or extremely upset.
Well, I just put up there he is acting hysterical and extremely upset.
Okay.
That's actually why I put acting.
The report is 1 page long, and your testimony is because you used the word acting hysterical and extremely upset. What you really meant is that he was putting on some sort of a show. Is that what you meant?
I would say that he was not acting genuine
Okay.
and
Show
acting
me- I'm sorry.
Right, that's exactly what I thought. That's what I was saying. He was literally. I felt that the acting was absolutely F.
Okay. I want you to show me in your report where you say that he was not acting genuine.
I do not put that in my report.
You don't put anywhere in that report anything about putting on a show or a performance or that it was fake or false. Nothing like that in your report, is there?
That's correct. That's just going off my memory.
If you'll take a look at the second paragraph, the second to the last sentence. No, I'm sorry, the third paragraph. I'm sorry. Let's go all the way down to the fourth paragraph. Okay? You talk about the fact that y'all gave some I'm sorry, it's actually the third paragraph.
Okay.
It's the third paragraph. You're given some specifics in here, and you're talking about some very detailed things. You're describing his tongue as being swollen. You're given some very details. You said after conducting approximately 90 to 100 compressions. You were given a lot of detail in your report. Is that fair to say?
I would say I'm describing the scene in pretty much detail right there.
Okay. So you went back after the shift, and these are some of the details that stuck out to you, the things that were important enough for you to put in your report. You described how it looked, and you described how many compressions you gave. It's fair to say?
That's fair to say.
All right. Look at the next paragraph. You say, I reluctantly ceased CPR on the child and advised additional officers to start moving the crowd of people back to secure the crime scene. I want you to read that next sentence, please.
When securing the scene, the father, Justin Harris, was still extremely upset and was not listening to officers when told to move back and provide his information.
All right. So at the end of your shift, you drafted your report of those details that you thought were important. You said that when securing the scene, Ross Harris, the father, was still extremely upset. He was not listening to officers when told to move back and provide information. And you wrote that because that's what you observed and that's what happened on the scene. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
You then wrote Officer Foglia advised the male that he needed to step back and get off the phone. She was shooing him back away. Isn't that correct?
I said he needed to step back and get off the phone. I didn't say shoot away.
Okay. Your words, she told him to step back.
Yes, sir.
The male refused and became verbally aggressive toward Officer Piper, Officer Foglia, and myself. Would you please read that next sentence?
When asked again to step back and get off the phone, Mel screamed, "Fuck you," and continued to disobey commands. Officer Piper and Officer Fuller detained Harris and escorted the subject to her patrol unit.
All right, thank you. All right, so for a second time, that was a detail you remembered at the end of your shift that you had to tell him again to step back. Isn't that correct?
I never told him to step back.
Okay. You overheard Officer Piper or Foglia to tell him to step back.
Officer Fuller did. That's what I heard between Officer Fuller and him.
Okay. Now, when asked in direct, when Mr. Boyd was questioning you, he asked you, when you first pulled up, describe the demeanor when you first saw him. Okay? And your response was, when I first saw him, he was talking on the phone.
That's right, looking up in the air, talking on the phone.
Okay. But when Mr. Boring asked you what his demeanor was, you left out the part in your report about him being hysterical and extremely upset.
Yeah. He was acting hysterical, and he was acting extremely upset.
Okay. And you talked about there being no consistency in the way he was acting. I want you to show me in your report where that was such an important thing that you noted that there wasn't any consistency in the way he was acting.
In the report, I did not write down the consistency part. It was writing sounds consistent. It's just off my memory of what I remember from that day and how he was acting and the consistency of when he was acting extremely upset and when he's being detained and completely acting not upset at all within a matter of a second.
Well, you would agree in the last paragraph, you remembered enough to write, after collecting all evidence near where the child lay, we then carefully picked Cooper up, using his first name, picked Cooper up from the hot asphalt where his father, Harris, had placed his small body once removed from the vehicle. All those sort of details, they made it into your report, right?
That's correct. That's what it says.
Okay. You testified that after Mr. Harris said the F word to Officer Piper Foglia, you testified that you responded in kind. And what was it that you yelled at him?
Watch his fucking mouth.
Okay. And then your testimony was that he then said, F you.
That's correct. Looked right at me and said, "Fuck you."
Okay. Show me in your report where you noted that.
That is the part that I was trying to get across when he looked at me and said, "Fuck you." And that's when I said 10-15 after that, which I was saying detained after that part. That's the part that I'm referring to, not the first part.
All right. Well, you told Mr. Boring that you had a chance to listen to Piper's recording, right?
That's correct. I've seen the video
All
and the
right.
recordings.
Well, you would agree, we don't hear that in the recording, do we?
I couldn't hear that in the recording.
Okay. But you maintain that that's what he said, even though it's not in the recording.
Absolutely.
All right. And y'all were all right there together, you and Foglia and Piper?
That's correct. All three of us were right there.
Okay. As close as we are, or closer? Is that fair to say? All four of you. You and Piper and Foglia and Ross Harris.
Are you saying how close am I to Ross Harris? Or
Yeah.
who? Probably a little bit closer.
All four of you were sort of right, almost within arm's reach while this hollering was going on.
That's correct.
Okay. So you certainly would agree that Officer Foglia and Officer Piper, they would have been close enough to hear if he had said that.
That's correct. They could have. I can't testify what they heard or not.
Okay. Were you aware there's a transcript of what occurred right there at the scene from Folia's recording in her vehicle?
Was it Foley's or Officer Piper's?
Piper's, I'm sorry.
That's correct. Officer Piper did have one, from my best understanding.
And have you looked at that transcript?
I've watched the video with the warning on it.
Okay. And you would agree that neither in the transcript or the recording do we hear this second FU from Ross Harris as you just testified to under oath?
That's correct. I can't actually hear it. When I actually watched the video, I can't hear it. But he did say "fuck you" and look directly at me.
You had a chance to take a look at Officer Folia's report and Officer Piper's report?
Not in detail.
Okay. Have you taken a look at it enough to note that neither of them mentioned?
Objection, Judge, hearsay as to what's in their report.
They've already testified, Judge.
That doesn't make it admissible.
I sustain the objection.
All right. This happened in June of 2014, so that's, well, almost 2.5 years ago. In all that time, you've never gone back and made any addendum to your report to add all of these things that we're now hearing about for the very first time today.
I wrote this report and nothing else.
If I could have just a moment, Judge.
Yes, sir, you may. You are.
Officer Gallimore, when you use the term acting in your report, is that first adjective, was that a description for all of his behavior?
I would say behavior changed. Like I said, there's no consistency in the behavior itself.
On that video, I think the jury's already seen it. Is there a lot of things that are inaudible and things like that on the patrol video?
Yes. There is some and some not.
Okay, you actually listened to that right before you came in here, right?
I did. I watched it this morning, sir.
Okay, so you knew that that's not in there, what was said, right?
That's correct. I already knew that.
So would you have any reason just to make that up?
No, I don't.
Okay. And let me ask you this. You're the person sitting there on the ground trying to save that child.
Yes.
There's been a lot of insinuations and things like that through cross-examination. Are you in here lying to this jury?
I am not lying at all.
Objection.
Sustained.
The things that you testified today to, are those things the truth?
They're the truth. Yes.
Judge, I'm going to object to that. Objection.
Judge, my response is it's based on the cross-examination where he's trying to call him a liar and not saying it.
I'm going to object to that too, Judge, and I believe maybe something from the court might be appropriate at that point as well.
I think we need to move on.
Okay. That's all I have, Judge.
I don't have any further questions.
You're excused.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Is all witness count correct? Does that conclude the day's business?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, eventually we're going to get on track. Right now, we all need to deal with the weather. And it's important that we deal with the weather and be safe so we can come back on Monday, 8:50, and we'll resume the trial. Now, leave your notepads in your jury room. They'll be locked and secure until you return to us. Keep an open mind. You've begun to hear some of the evidence. You haven't heard all the evidence, argument, or law. You're in no position whatsoever to be forming any conclusions about anything. Sort of kind of lock yourself where you are right now. Give yourself a bit of a break from this. Because I expect you're like me, you guys figure out where to put a grill and where, how to drag this furniture in and all kinds of things I've never had to do. But y'all had to do it and you know what to do. So y'all go home and y'all deal with the weather. And enjoy some, I guess, downtime. I don't know. But anyway, keep an open mind. Don't form conclusions about issues presented to you by the evidence. Leave your notepads in your jury room. Do not talk to each other, anyone else, or let anyone talk to you about the case. It's imperative. Social media, you know people are watching, so don't do it because it'll cause a big problem. And anything else that you could think of to acquire information about this case, do not do it. The fact of the matter is that everything that the law permits you to have about this case, you will have. And that's the information you'll have to do your work as a jury. It's going to come to you. You have to give it time. And for what we do in this courtroom to have quality and integrity is that we must follow the law. And the law says that what you know about the case has to come to you from this courtroom, only this courtroom. So, let's take some time away from it. 100%. And then finally, be safe and well, and I will see you all on Monday.
That's all right. Please let the stuff go down.